All right, so the first card that we're going to do in this class is this Roses card. We're using an opal foil, and the foil comes in a package like this, and there's 5 sheets in there that are 6 inches by 12 inches. So typically you can do about 3 cards with the front of this, but I'll also show you how to sorry, it's stuck on my panel here. I'll also show you how to use the back of it. All right, I'm gonna have to rip this. There we go. All right, so I'm going to cut my foil just to cover the front of my card. All right, so I'm gonna have that to the side. I'm gonna demonstrate on black cardstock because you're gonna be able to see on camera what I am describing a little bit easier than you'll see it on white cardstock. So I've got my black piece of cardstock right here. I'm going to put it down on my surface. I'm going to tape it in place. And then I'm gonna place my stencil where I want it to go. And I'm going to tape that in place with a little hinge. And the reason I do that is so then when I lift the stencil, if I accidentally lose hold of it and it drops exactly the same spot, so I'm not going to mess anything up. There are parts of the stencil that I don't want on the front of this card. So the easiest way to avoid that is just to use pieces of tape and close and cover them up. That way you don't accidentally get paste in those areas. You don't necessarily have to do it, but this way I don't have to worry about it quite as much. So the paste I'm going to use is Decofoil Transfer Gel. So this works in 2 different ways. You can use it with heat or you can use it with pressure. We're going to use it with pressure in this class. So I've got a palette knife here. I'm going to take some of the gel and I'm going to push it into the stencil here. I'm not worried about it going off of the card because it will clean up off my desk super quickly and easily with just a baby wipe. But I do want to make sure that I get a nice smooth layer. And because I've got areas taped that I don't want the paste to go, I don't have to worry about being super careful on this side of my card because I know it's not going to go into areas I don't want. All right, once that is all filled, I'm going to put the excess in the container. Lift my stencil up, and like I said, I can just lift it up. If I lose hold of it, it'll just fall in the same spot. And then I pull my stencil up. This needs to be cleaned fairly quickly because that is basically glue that you're putting on your card base. Now you see how it's really white? We need to wait for it to dry until it's completely clear like this. And this is what I meant by being able to see the difference on black cardstock better than white. On white, it's harder to see when it's completely clear on camera. So you can see it very easily on between the black and the white there. So I'm going to put that aside there. And I'm going to clean this up quickly with a baby wipe because we want to get all the glue off. Now the only other thing that I did on my card base that we're going to use is I put a little bit of this onto my desk here, just like this. And then I took the edge of my cardstock piece, and you can do this in 2 steps if you want, and I just rubbed it through because I want to have a little bit of that foil showing on the side of my card just to frame it. And it's not going to be super even, but I just want to add just a touch to frame it a little bit. So if you want to do that at the same time, you can. If you would prefer, you can foil your piece first, then do that and do it in 2 different steps. But you want to make sure that that dries completely before you move on to the next step. And once again, let's clean this off here. So let's move the sample card aside. And in order to use pressure, what I'm going to use is my die cutting machine. So I'm going to take that foil, there it is. I'm going to lay it on the front of the card, grab my die cutting machine. Now when I do this, I do make sure that I use 2 very flat plates. I don't want to use my plate that's like this because that's going to add some texture to the front of your card. So I'm going to use 2 very flat plates. Put it on the plate there, put the other plate on top of it, and then run it through the machine. 1 time's probably enough, but I typically do it back and forth just to get the pressure going from both sides. glue must have gotten to the back of my card because it's sticking to my plate there. Now let's move the machine out of the way. And now we can lift up our foil. And because of that pressure, it is stuck to anywhere that I have had any of that glue. So now we can simply glue that to the front of our card. And I'm just going to use some Distress Collage medium to do that. I'm going to center it. Oh, I didn't cut this down so I have a frame. So this one here, we just don't have a mat around it. That's okay. Typically what I would do ahead of time is cut it down so that there is a bit of the card base behind it. And like I said before, I didn't really like this opal as much on the black. I found it showed up nicer on the white. But this way you can see what it looks like on black. Right here, I had not waited long enough for my gel to dry, so some of it ripped when it came up, but I was able to put gel again and then redo it. Where you see it darker here is where there's 2 layers of foil on the gel. Just to be aware that you can kind of fix it, but that's the effect that you're gonna get. And then if you wanted to do a different color, this is just gold on the black. And then finally, you can have fun with a bunch of different colors. So this is just a bunch of different colors. It's got gold, red, purple on the back as well. So you can use a few different colors, and foils come in so many different colors. The sky's the limit, really. But that is how you're going to use the gel through a stencil. So in the next section, we're going to be using it with a stamp, and I'll show you how to do that there. We'll see you then.